Okay, we are at the 2 dots, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines up from where they get skinny. Neta Ravai, Umeiser Sheni. We said, oh, thank you. Should mention our sponsors before we get started rather than after. It's always a good way to go. Daf Yomi is sponsored for the week by Mr. Aaron Kislasi for the Refuah Shlema of Gracia Bat Misoda and Hadra Bat Esther, his mother and his mother-in-law, respectively, and also for an Aliyah's Neshama for Nechemia Yisrael Meir Ben Malka. And the Neshama should have an Aliyah, and everybody should have a Refuah Shlema.
Amen.
The Daf Yomi for the week is also sponsored by Dan Stern in honor of Rabbi and Rebbetzin Avraham and Rachel Gislason. And also today's Daf is sponsored by Shlomo and Naomi Radcliffe, B'zchus Refuah Shlema for Ephraim Ben Shifra. And he should have a complete Refuah Shlema. And now we are in the Gemara Neta Ravayu Meiser Sheni Shein Damav Yeduin Bishlosha. The next case of how many judges that we need is going to be a case of Neta Ravai, 4th year produce. When fruit-bearing trees are planted in Eretz Yisrael, the first 3 years are orla, they cannot be used. The 4th year, the produce is brought to Yerushalayim and consumed there. Meiser Sheni is a second tithe that is brought on a 7-year cycle. We have every year, the person who's growing crops in Eretz Yisrael has to take off truma and give that to the Kohen. Then he has to take off 10% of what remains and give that to a Levi. That's Meiser Rishon, give that to a Levi. After that, on years 1, 2, not 3, 4, 5, not 6, or 7, he's going to give Meiser Sheni. And that's going to be brought to Yerushalayim and eaten by the person himself, but has to be eaten in Yerushalayim. Years 3 and 6 is Meiser Ani, goes to the poor people. And year 7, of course, nothing because it's a Shemitah year. So these things, Neta Ravai and Meiser Sheni, need an evaluation. Because transporting large amounts of produce, first of all, I would presume some of it would go bad if it was fruits or vegetables of the like, and you want to wait until you are going to Yerushalayim in order to consume them in Yerushalayim. So you're going anyway. Everybody who lived in Eretz Yisrael was going to Yerushalayim 3 times a year anyway, so you may as well bring it with you when you go rather than make a special trip in order to consume it there. And also, it could be a lot of stuff. So I would imagine transportation would be difficult. So redeeming it onto money would be a great idea. Once you get to Yerushalayim with your money, you can then purchase whatever food you want, right? So you can go out for a steak dinner and you can go out have all kinds of delicacies. And it was great for the economy of Yerushalayim, as you can imagine, because essentially everybody from all over was taking 10% of the GDP and spending it in Yerushalayim over a very short amount of time during the Yom Tovim.
GDP stands for what?
Gross domestic product. Thank you. It's a good. That's not a Gemara term. So they would take 10% of whatever they was that they were growing, and they would consume it in Yerushalayim, plus the Nitza Ravai. So it's a lot of stuff. So now Tana Rabbanan rabbis learn Ezehu Meiser Sheni she'ein damav Yedun. The question is, if I go to the store, I can tell you how much oranges cost, how much avocados cost. It's not really so complicated to be able to figure out what something costs that year. So therefore, why did I need a group of 3 judges in order to figure out what the value of these goods are? So the answer is, we must have some kind of produce that its value is unknown. And what is that? So peiros sheher kivu, it's fruits that have started to rot. Meaning at the beginning when they're fresh, so you could sell them in the store. But once they're starting to go off a little bit, so then their value is reduced, the amount of people who would consume them, or whether they're fit for animal food or something like that, the value goes down. V'yayin shehikrim, or wine that starts to turn to vinegar. Umos shehechlidu, and also coins. The coins were really the coins themselves had value based on the metal that was in the coin. So a coin that started to get used over time would have chunks missing or pieces shaved off of it or whatever, would actually be reduced in value. People did not want, for now we're used to here's a quarter. It doesn't matter whether it's a quarter from 1980 or whether it's a quarter from 2020. It doesn't make a difference to us. But back then it really did make some difference. If it was a well-circulated coin, then it could be worn down and it was not as valuable. So then you would need it to be evaluated. Tana Rabbanan Rabbizard. Meiser Sheni she'ein damav yeduin. If you have Meiser Sheni, the second tithe that's going to be eaten in Yerushalayim, that its value is not known. Podenoso b'shlosha lekuchos. Then you're going to need 3. Lekuchos are judges that are in the business. Meaning it's not, you don't need people who are experts in, dinim of halachos of knas and things. You need market people who are aware of the markets. You can't have judges who aren't aware of the market values. Afilu nachri echad mehen. You can even have a non-Jew be one of them. It doesn't have to even be a Jewish person. The purpose here is value determination. Afilu echad mehem balim. Even if one of them is actually the owner of the produce, right? You're by having more than one person, you're going to remove the possibility that the person's going to be dishonest with his transaction, right? Normally, a person, when the item is known, the value is known, the person can redeem it on his own. And remember, the owner himself isn't actually losing anything because he's going to redeem the value and keep that money himself and be able to use it in Yerushalayim. So he's really using it. So the owner really has nothing to lose here by over-evaluating it or whatever, or under-evaluating. So he's going to give an honest evaluation of it. By Rabbi Yirmiyah asks, Shlosha umatilin l'toch kis echad mahu. What if you've got 3 people who are partners? They're all part of the same conglomerate, right? Can you go to a trade partnership? People, three people work for the same organization, 3 partners. Can you have those 3 people be your evaluation? So Toshma. So we are going to learn that ish ushtei noshav podin meiser sheni she'ein damav yeduin. A man and his 2 wives can be the 3 people that are involved in judging what the value of this meiser sheni can be. So you'd presume they're all part of the same household. So you see that 3 partners can, in fact, do the evaluation together. No, not necessarily so, because that might not prove it. Because Dilma could go in Rav Papa ubas Abba Surah. Maybe this was an arrangement like Rav Papa and Bas Abba Surah. Rav Papa his financial relationship with his spouse was such that she would work for her own salary and he would work for his own salary, and their finances were kept separate. Now, normally speaking, when the Chachamim established in Iksuba that when a man gets married to his wife, he has financial responsibility for her. And in exchange, if she goes to work, the money that she earns goes into his account so that he can then provide, right? So if she goes to work, so then all of her handiwork goes to him, and then he can then supplement whatever he needs, but then provide for the family. The woman, it's up to the woman's discretion, the woman's choice. If she is if she's making a significant lot more money, she can opt out, right? She can decide that I'm going to keep my money, and then in exchange, you have no obligation to feed me. Right? So therefore, the husband has no obligation to take care of her, but she can decide, well, I'm a very successful real estate mogul, and therefore I don't want to be part of give my income to the, right? It's the whole idea of it is protection of her. So therefore, Rav Papa and the daughter of Abba Surah had an agreement that they would keep their financial obligations separate. It is my understanding that this is Rav Papa's second wife as well. So I don't know whether the fact that they had a separation, that maybe they got married when they were already later on in life and had their own separate businesses and things. But in any event, the point is that a man and 2 wives, his 2 wives, could potentially evaluate this property because they're not sharing the value together. Right? And so therefore, even though they are related and, there is a certain amount of relationship between the 3 of them, nevertheless, since they are each 3 separate individual financial individuals, they can judge together what the value of this Meiser Sheni could be.
I want to ask if because we were talking about Yarshiking before and how the son, he's going back, but the son had to take care of the mother. Mm-hmm. If they opt out in terms of this,
then they're opted out. Yep,
he doesn't have that. The son correct. Doesn't even take care of it.
That's right. When she's opted out, she's opted out. Next is hekdeshos b'shlosha. If we have things that are donated to the Beis Hamikdash, right? So then the value of those items need to be determined by 3. Masnisin delo ki haitana. Our Mishnah does not follow the opinion that is listed in this brisa, which is okay, as we said that Mishnayos and brisos are written at the same time. Just Rabbi Yehuda Nasi took the ones that were the most established and the ones that we follow the halacha into the Mishnah, but it's possible there were other opinions out there that were not included in the Mishnah. Here's one. The Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Afilu tzinur shel hektish, even a fork, a spinning fork of hektish, which was apparently used for spinning gold threads. And I was looking up to try to figure out how do you spin gold into gold threads? And the answer is it's complicated. But the fork apparently can be a piece of wood, and it really is not a very expensive instrument, right? The fork itself that you're spinning the gold with is an inexpensive instrument.
Like if it's so expensive, couldn't you break it? The gold is so heavy. It makes
no, that's what I was saying. I cannot tell you how it's done. There was a lot. Yes,
very malleable.
It's soft, and so in any event, this spinning fork, right, of hektish, tzricha asar b'nei adam liftosa, even though it is of such small value, still needs 10 people in order to evaluate it, because we are going to protect the assets of the Beis HaMikdash, and we're going to have a larger court come to evaluate hektish items, right? We're going to use the word hektish for items that are consecrated to the Beis HaMikdash. Now, that means that our Mishnah does not agree with this brisa. Our Mishnah said 3. This brisa seems to say 10. Okay. Amalei Rav Papa Abaye. Rav Papa says to Abaye, Bishlam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. I understand according to Eliezer Yaakov. Where does he get the idea that there are 10 judges from? De Amar Kishmuel. He holds like Shmuel. Damar Shmuel. Shmuel says Asara Kohanim Kesuvin Beparsha. If you look at the Torah portion, which discusses the evaluation of items that are consecrated to the Beis HaMikdash. So there's 3 distinct sections. There's the section that talks about utensils, the section that talks about animals that are not kosher, that are not going to be used for sacrifices, and the third section has to do with land. In each of those parshas, in Parsha 1, the word Kohen is written 3 times. In Parsha number 2, the word Kohen is written 3 more times. And in the Parsha number 4, with land, it's written 4 times, for a total of 10 times. So therefore, since the word Kohen is written 10 times, that's how we know that there should be 10 judges when evaluating any property. Ela l'Rabbanan, but according to the rabbis, Shlosha minalu, where do they get the idea there should be 3 judges? V'chitema d'chsev behu shlosha, and if you're going to say because, when it comes to evaluating utensils, it only has the word Kohen written 3 times. Remember, it was 3 times, 3 times, and then 4 times. So maybe we're going to look. Could you pass me a tissue? If you're going to look at, thank you. If you're going to look at the number of times that the word Kohen is Kohen is written by the evaluation of utensils, it's really only written 3 times. So karkos dichsiv behu arba tiske barba. Then if that's what you're going to do, you're going to divide up each of the sections. So then when it comes to the section dealing with land, it's only written 4 times. And there, v'chitei mahachinami, and before you answer, okay, that's fine, then there's only 4 judges needed to evaluate land according to the Tana of our Mishnah. Alama Tanan, why does our Mishnah say, hakarkos tisha v'kohen? Why does our Mishnah say that you need 9 people plus a Kohen? Sounds like you do need 10. So Ella, what are you going to explain? Demeshami b'hu asara hekdeshos. The answer is, the way that the Tana of our Mishnah is looking at it is that the first section, which has to do with the evaluating of utensils, Kohen is written 3 times. Hence, three are necessary. Then, by the time it gets additional, right? So by the time you get to the last portion, which has to do with land, there's a total of 10 up until this point. That's why there's 10 when it comes to land, and 3 when it comes to other utensils. Okay? So now, if that's true though, so Demeshami behu shisa liboyu, Shisa. So the answer is when you get to the portion which has to do with animals, where you now have 6 Kohanim written up until this point, because 3 in the first section, 3 in the second section, you should be up to 6. You should need 6 in order to judge animals, but nobody ever says that. So the answer is kasha. That is a fair question. Right? So it's not always that we resolve all of the questions at the end. It isn't a question which is unanswerable. When the Gemara uses the word tiyufta, it means that we have refuted the position. When the Gemara uses the word kasha, it means that's a fair point, but it's not a point that's strong enough to undermine the general. In other words, our Mishnah can still be correct, that you need 3, that you need 10, but it requires further investigation and further understanding as to why that would be. Okay, so now, Erchin. So then it says that we're going to have a value of kodshim. That was one of the cases of our Mishnah. Now, the word erchin, right, is used in the Torah to refer specific to a circumstance where a person says that he's going to give his erech value to the Beis Hamikdash. An erech value is different than donating your actual value in that your erech value is predetermined by exactly what it says in the psukim. At certain ages, certain genders have certain values. Okay, so that your value between the ages of 20 and 50 is 30 shkalim. Does not matter whether you are 6'5" and 280 pounds, or whether you are 5'2" and 125 pounds. You have the value, erech value of that amount, period, because that is the value of a person who's between the ages of 20 and 50, and then there's a value of somebody who's younger, value of somebody who's older, and your value changes for women, for men, and the Torah prescribes it and has it established and set. Now, this rule of erechin only applies to human beings. Okay, it doesn't apply to any other object. So when this person makes a statement, he says, the erech value of my movable items, right? So it says we need 3 judges. Now, what does this statement even mean? So, my erechin hametaltalin, what is the case? What is he saying when he uses this strange language of the erech? The erech we usually translate as the value of, right? But as I said, it really doesn't necessarily just mean the value of. It's referring specifically to a circumstance where a person is donating a set amount based on what the Torah wrote is the value of your age and your gender. So Amar Rav Gidol says in the name of Rav, Omer erech kli ze alai. If a person says, the erech of this utensil is my responsibility to give to the Beis Hamikdash. Damar Rav Gidol says Amar Rav, he says in the name of Rav, we're moving on to Tesvav Amad Aleph. I'm going to try to announce that now so that we don't lose track of where we are. Tesvav Amad Aleph. Ha-omer erech kli ze alai. If somebody says this language, that the erech of this utensil is upon me, no saying domov, he has to give its value. Now, that's not what the word erech means. Why didn't you just say the value of this item? My time, what is that? Adam yodeh she'ein erech likli. Everybody knows there's no such thing as an erech to a utensil. Ve'gamar ve'amar l'shum domim. So why did he say it? The answer is he said it with the intention of wanting to give the value of the utensil, right? Person doesn't say something for nothing. So therefore, when he said this, it was imprecise language. He meant to give the value. Therefore, that's what he's going to be responsible to give. Mishum hachi no sein damov. That is why you're going to give the value of the item, even though you used imprecise language. Now, hi erechin hametaltalin. What do you mean? If that's what the language means, it says erechin hametaltalin, the movable value. It says erechin shel metaltalin mibayle. The Mishnah should have used the language, the value of the movable items. That would have been a more precise language. So the answer is Tani erechin shel metaltalin. Yeah, you can adjust the text to mean to say that. That's what the text's meaning is. Rav Chisda doesn't like that. He says Rav Chisda Amar Ravimi, b'matfis metaltalin le'erchin. What happens is like this. He explained the case is that somebody made the declaration, my erech is going to go to the Beis Hamikdash, which has a meaning, right? So now this fellow owes a certain number of shkalim to the Beis Hamikdash. Well, he doesn't have cash on hand. So therefore, he says, I'm going to give this utensil as the money that's going to go to the Beis Hamikdash. So now this utensil, we have to determine the value of this utensil because it is going as payment for my erech vow. That's what's happening here. So, hay erchin hametaltalin, what do you mean then by using this phrase of erchin that are movable? It's metaltalin shel erchin mibayle. It should be movable items that are used for your erech vow. That's what it should say. So, tani metaltalin shel erchin. He says, you're right. That's how you should understand our Mishnah. Our Mishnah should be understood as movable items that are being used to pay your erech vow. Okay, so that's the two opinions. Rabbi Yavo Amar, be'omer erchi alai, right? So, Rabbi Yavo explains, somebody says, my value, my erech value was upon me. I have to give my erech value. Ba kohen ligvos mimenu. The kohen comes and says, okay, time to pay up. Ba kos ligvos mimenu metaltalin. And now the kohen's going to come and he's going to collect movable items because he doesn't have cash to be able to pay it off. Bishlosha, he needs 3 judges to evaluate the goods that he's taking so that he doesn't over-collect or under-collect.
You get money from the community.
This is not for the kohen. This is for the Beis Hamikdash, right? The money goes to the Beis Hamikdash. The coin's just going to be the guy who's the judge or the collector.
It's a tax on my existence. Is that what it is? Basically?
Self-imposed,
right?
Right?
But I'm obligated to pay it every year.
No. This is just you decided you wanted to do it.
I want to do it.
Yeah, this is your own oath. right? This is not like a half shekel or anything else that you have to do. This is what somebody decided on his own that he wanted to give a gift to the Beis Hamikdash.
Why doesn't he just take it, sell it, and then
He could do that too.
over, under, whatever?
Then it's clear.
Yeah.
Correct.
Clarity.
The answer is for the sake of I guess it's ease, right? Before I have to, sometimes I go and I take a look. I've got I may have some silver dishes or something. By the time I go to find some, they didn't have eBay. Right. By the time I go find somebody who's interested in my small town, remember looking at the small villages, the size of the towns that they had, 200 people here. Who wants a silver dish? So there's nobody here who wants it. So the Beis Hamikdash, it's easier for the Beis Hamikdash to evaluate
They
it.
can't take it on consignment, and then
On Craigslist, that might be easier.
Yeah, so that they didn't have then. So you have to keep in mind, finding a buyer for your used utensils might not be so simple.
No, but
right?
Erech in itself it's something that we're obligated to pay, or it's a gift.
No, it's his own. It's his own volunteer.
We pay our value. We'd say we'd pay.
That's
Erech.
correct. Yep.
Interesting.
So okay. So now karkos basar. If the person is giving land to pay off, then you need 10. As we said, that 10 people are going to be necessary for the valuation of land. Amalei Rav Achmi Difti the Ravina. Rav Acha from Difti said to Ravina, Bishlam alafu kemei hektish ba'inan shlosha. So I understand if you're redeeming something from hektish. I understand that the psukim talk about if somebody wants to redeem something from hektish, they have an item. They said, I want to give this to the Beis Hamikdash, and now he wants to keep that item and he wants to pay money instead of that item. So I understand why we would have to evaluate that item so that the Beis Hamikdash gets what's valued. But the Torah never talks about evaluating an object so that you know how much it's worth to give it to the Beis Hamikdash. Right? Usually that's irrelevant. If I say this dish belongs to the Beis Hamikdash, the dish belongs to the Beis Hamikdash, I don't need to care how much it's worth. But now in this circumstance, I do. But where did you ever see in the psukim that you need to have a determination of value in order to make something into hektish? So Amar Leh, he said, Svarahu, it's logical. Because Mali Iyule, Mali Afuke, what difference would it make if you're worried about bringing something into hektish or taking something out of hektish? Afuke mai taima, what is the reason why we needed 3 judges if you're going to redeem something from hektish? Dilma toi, because maybe they'll make a mistake and the Beis Hamikdash will get shortchanged. Iyuli nami, dilma toi. So here, this circumstance, we have a situation where also if the item gets undervalued, or overvalued, the item gets it's harder if it's overvalued. If it's overvalued, hektish could lose out. Therefore, an evaluation needs to take place. So therefore, you're right. The Torah never says that putting something into hektish requires 3 judges. It's just logical. It's anytime you have a circumstance where you're dealing with a monetary case with the Beis Hamikdash, you want to have a set of judges that are going to evaluate it correctly. Okay, then we have Rabbi Yehuda Omer. The next case of the Mishnah was that Rabbi Yehuda says that one of them needs to be a Kohen. One of the judges needs to be a Kohen. So, Amar le Rav Papa la Abaye. So Rav Papa says to Abaye, Bishlam le Rabbi Yehuda, I understand why Rabbi Yehuda says that. Hainu dichsiv Kohen. Every time you read the Torah in these psukim, where it says in Vayikra, right, where you're doing this evaluation process, the psukim say the Kohen does the evaluation. The Kohen does the evaluation. Kohen does the evaluation. El Rabbanan Kohen lamalu. So if it just means a judge in general, why does it keep saying Kohen? So the answer is kasha. That's a good question, right? And there's lots of discussion as to exactly why. The word kohen seems to be a word that the Torah would use to talk about somebody who would just be generally available and working for the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, it doesn't necessarily have to be a kohen. It just is that's what's practically
why
there.
Do you call him a kohen?
That's the question. So that Rabbi Yehuda's answer seems that the kasha, that Rabbi Yehuda's answer seems better than right. His answer is that it has to be a kohen.
Yeah.
Now harkarkos tishav a kohen. Land needs to be 9 people and 1 person's a kohen. Minani mili. How do you see that? Amar Shmuel, as Shmuel said, asar kohenim ksuvim beparsha. The word kohen is written 10 times total in this portion regarding evaluations. Chad legufei. 1 is going to be to tell me that you need a Kohen, right? Because he uses the word Kohen. And then, Hanach, the other times it says Kohen, havi miut achar miut. We have a principle called a limiting verse after a limit verse, okay? And ve'ein miut achar miut ela l'rabos. Here's how it works, right? When the Torah writes something the first time to say that, let's say, for example, it says Kohen the first time. When the Torah says the word Kohen the first time, so it tells us that you can't use anybody other than a Kohen. When the Torah writes Kohen the second time, it's unnecessary. You've already told me. Why don't you just use the word judge after that? You've already told me they have to be a Kohen. Therefore, when the Torah says Kohen a second time, it's to teach me the exact opposite, right? Because whenever the Torah doesn't waste any words.
Right.
So if the Torah doesn't teach me if it can't come to teach me the obvious explanation, it has to come and teach me something else.
Wouldn't that cause a contradiction, though?
It's not a contradiction. It's miyut achar miyut. This is the way that miyut achar miyut's worked in the Torah. So if I have a limiting word and then I have a second limiting word after that, the second limiting word comes to include everybody again. So therefore, the first time the word Kohen is written, it's to tell me that the judge has to be a Kohen. The second time it says Kohen is to tell me that he doesn't have to be a Kohen. He could be a Kohen, right? It's exactly the opposite. Okay, so but these are the rules, right? So you got to be able to make sure that there's.
But when you go back and
A
forth,
fancy word, we call it the hermeneutical principles of Talmudic exegesis.
when you go back, but when you go back and forth, because then the third time it would say Kain, it would go back.
Oh, good question. Okay, hang on. It's a great question. You hear what Brian is saying? Brian's saying if that's true, then the third time goes back to being a Kohen, and then the fourth time he's not a Kohen. Then the fifth time. So how many Kohanim and how many Yisrael?
Kohen,
Five.
Kohanim.
Great question. Okay, good. So now, Dafilu Tes Yisrael ve'echad Kohen. You can have 9 judges who are regular Jews, one is a Kohen. Maskifla Rav Huna, Breder Rav Nassan, and Brian Schiffman. So Rav Huna, the son of Rav Nassan, and Reb Brian Schiffman both asked the question, Ema Chamisha Kohanim v'Chamisha Yisraelim. If that's the case, you just need 5 Kohanim, 5 Yisraelim. Kasha, good question. It got left for the last 2,500 years, though. I don't know if we're answering it today. Okay? The Adam Kayotze Bahen. Okay? Now, the Mishnah says that just like land needs 10 people, human beings need 10 people. Okay? When you're going to donate a human being to the Beis Hamikdash, you need 10 people to evaluate the human being.
But you can have problems then if you have to donate human beings.
Good question. Adam Mikadosh can't make a human being holy to the Beis Hamikdash, right? The Beis Hamikdash can't own a human being. Amar Rabbi Yovo says, "Ba'omer dami alai." What he says is, I am donating my value. Now, notice the language distinction. Erech alai is not the same thing as dami alai. Dami alai is whatever is my worth in the marketplace as slave labor. That is my worth. That is what I'm suggesting I want to donate to the Beis Hamikdash. Titania's going to brisa. Haomer demei alai, samin oso ke'eved hanimkar b'shuk. Somebody says, I give my value. We evaluate what he would be worth on the slave market in the marketplace. The eved iskash lekarkos. And we've learned in other places that slaves and land have the similar halachos, hence that just as land needs to have 10 people, so too slaves need to, evaluations have to have 10 people. Boy Rabbi Abin, Shara Omed Ligzos, Sa'ar HaOmed Ligzos, let's say there's somebody who has long hair, okay, and he's ready to cut his hair, and he wants to donate that hair to the Beis Hamikdash. It's got value, right? Shetels, right? So this guy's got very long hair, or this lady has very long hair, wants to donate the hair to the Beis Hamikdash.
Did they inspect the hair?
Now they got to inspect the hair. They got to determine what is the value of this hair. So, bekama, how much? Because gozus dami ubishlosha. Do we look at it and say the hair is like it has already been cut? Because if you've got a big chunk of hair, it's a movable item. So movable items need 3 judges. That's it. Oh, kimechuber dami ubasara, or is it attached to a person? And a person needs 10 people to judge. So, which is it? Toshma, come and listen. Hamakdishes avdo ein moalin bo. If somebody consecrates his slave to the Beis Hamikdash, so there's no prohibition of what's called me'ila. Me'ila is the illegal use of something that belongs to the Beis Hamikdash, right? Me'ila doesn't apply to a slave that is donated to the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, Moalin Bisaro. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, though, says that his hair, right, can be. Now, what is he saying? The slave himself, because he's a human being, there's no me'ila attached to it. The hair must not be a human being, must not be part of the human being, because if it was the slave, any part of the slave, there would be no me'ila. Right. The hair, he must be saying that the hair is separate from the human being, right? Therefore, the Kaimalon, we established this case, Dibasaraho made ligzos pligi, that the argument here is hair that is ready to be cut, right? The hair. So therefore, according to the Tanakama, according to the first opinion, he says that this hair is attached to the person, and there's no me'ilah, hence also the hair is attached to the person, therefore 10 judges. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, no, the hair is not considered attached to the person. Therefore, if a person uses that hair, he commits me'ilah also. It's not attached to the person, therefore 3 judges. Shma mina, that's what we're going to conclude. Nema hani tanai kahani tanai. Let's also establish that this disagreement between these two tanaim about whether the hair is attached or not is also similar to another argument between tanaim. It's not we learn a Mishnah. Rabbi Meir says, Yesh dvarim shehein kekarka ve'enan kekarka. There are some things which in some ways are like land, and there are some ways that they're not like land. Ve'en chachamim modim lo. And chachamim don't agree with him. They don't agree with it. Ketzad. What's the example? Eser gefanim to unos masarti lach v'hala omer einon ela chamesh. Let's say one person says, I gave you 10 vineyards, 10 vines that had grapes on them, okay? And the other person responds, no, you only gave me 5. Now, this is the classic example that we've had in the past of modeh b'miktsas, right? Some person claims, you owe me, right? You're basically saying, I gave you 10, you owe me 10 back. And the person says, no, it was only 5. Now, he's not denying the claim, right? So we've said in this circumstance that if a person wouldn't be chutzpahdik to deny a claim fully, why? Because the person did him a favor and gave him a loan. So he wouldn't deny it. What would he do? He'd admit to part of it because he can only pay back part of it now. So he'd admit to part of it, hoping to pay back the rest later.
Isn't that kind of lying, though?
That is kind of lying. Hence, the Torah tells us that you must swear that you are telling the truth. You must go to Beis Din, hold a Sefer Torah, and you must take an oath because we are concerned this lie is too easy, right? This is so that's what we're concerned with. The Torah obligates that the person has to take an oath in that circumstance. Now we have a rule that when it comes to land, there's no oaths with regard to land. Only movable property. As land, there's a pasuk that tells us that. We won't get into the details of that. But the point of this is, here you've got vines laden with grapes. And the question is, do you have to take an oath or not? The vine is still attached to the ground. The grapes are attached to the vine. Are the grapes considered to be land? That's the question.
No, but the grapes can be part of attach your land still from the roots.
That's the issue, right? So now are they considered attached? So Rabbi Meir Mechayev, Rabbi Meir says he's got to take an oath on this, indicating that he holds that the grapes are considered separate from the ground. The Chacham say no. No distinction. Anything that's still attached to the ground is just like the ground. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. So Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina explained, we're dealing with grapes really ready to harvest right now. We're not dealing with grapes that are still growing. Clearly, grapes that are growing are still attached to the ground. We're dealing with grapes that you could pick them today, right? So they're not really attached to the ground. They're not getting a sustenance. Mar Savar Kibetzuros Damyan. One opinion is that since they could be harvested, they are as if they are already harvested. Umar Savar Lav Kibetzuros Damyan. The other one says, no, right now they're not harvested, so they're still attached to the ground. That's the argument. And so therefore, they want to say this is the exact same thing as the hair of the person. Since you could cut it, it's as though it's already cut, or is it still attached? So the answer is low. No. The arguments between the comparison of the grape and the person are not the same. Why? Because afilu tema Rabbi Meir, maybe Rabbi Meir would agree. Ad kan lo kama Rabbi Meir, hasam kol kama deshavka luhu miklish kachashi. Because why? When it comes to the grapes, if you leave those grapes unpicked, what's going to happen to them? They're going to rot. They're going to go bad. So therefore, he holds that the grapes are done with the ground. Even if you haven't plucked them, they're done. They're finished. Aval saro, but when it comes to the hair of a person, kol kama deshavka luhu ashbuchi mashpiach. The longer you leave that hair attached to the person, the longer it's going to get, the better it's going to get, right? It's not going to, right? It's once you cut it, it can get dry or whatever. So therefore, it's better to leave it attached. So the two things are not similar. So that's
interesting. Yeah.
Right? Dina nefashos. Then we said that when it comes to life and death cases, you need 23 judges. Example of the life and death cases were someone has relations with an animal, and we said that the animal gets the same death, 23 judges, just like the person does. So kapasik v'tani loshna rovea zachar v'loshna rovea nekeva. We said this Mishnah seems to speak clearly, and I think Aviv, you had asked this question when we had mentioned it. It doesn't matter whether the person who is on the receiving end of the relations with this animal is male or female. Doesn't matter. Bishlama rovea nekeva. But when it comes to the animal having relations with a woman, so the pasuk says, "Dichsiv v'harag desa isha v'esa behema," you kill the animal and the woman. El rovea zachar minolan. But where is the Torah telling us that there's a death penalty for the animal mating with a man? Dichsev, as the pasuk says, kol shochev im behema mos yumas. The pasuk says anybody who sleeps with an animal will die. Now, im eno inyan l'shochev, if it's not talking about somebody who actually has relations with the animal, because teneo inyan l'nishkav, it's the person who is on the receiving end. So why? Because we already have another pasuk that talks about having relations with an animal that's a death sentence. So therefore, this pasuk is extra. And again, we said, whenever the Torah writes something extra, you can't interpret it as the simple explanation because it wouldn't be there to be extra. Therefore, you have to be able to assign it to a new case that's not specified. Therefore, it's telling us that even if the male is on the receiving end of relations with an animal, that would also be a misa. So then why does the Torah use it in the language of to lie with, which implies that the male is having relations with the animal, not the animal is having relations with the man? Lakushe nishkav l'shochev, in order to connect the two together and say, ma shochev hu ubehemto be'esrim ushlosha, just like somebody who has relations with the animal, that's where the Torah says you're going to have 23 judges. Af nishkav hu ubehemto be'esrim ushlosha. So too, a person who is on the receiving end of the relation with the animal also is going to get judged with 23 judges, and the animal is also going to get judged with 23 judges. Okay, so therefore all the cases are together, all are united, all get the same halacha.
Can I ask something a little bit off of the topic?
We'll see.
Okay.
Depends on how
when
off.
Yosef was being sold, it wasn't a Dinei Nefashos case.
Yeah.
It was an evaluation of...
Kind of was
slavery.
Dinei Nefashos, wasn't it?
But how could it be if it was only 10 judges?
That's a good question. I knew
I
we
would
had
figure it was going to be an Eved. I would figure as an Eved.
They were, and that's why they had 10. They evaluated him and sold him, right? But why couldn't they do Misa? I wonder if there was this good whether there should be shown him that discuss and say maybe that was one of the reasons why they decided not to kill him. We don't have all the judges necessary to do it, right? And decided we were going to evaluate him with 10, right? And Levi was there as the Kohen, so therefore you're in good shape, right?
If you trusted that Levi to be a Kohen,
he started it all. Okay, good point. It's a good parsha tie-in. Not sure of the answer, but now that you say it, it's a good word. Okay. Shor haniskal be'esrim ushlosha. The shor is going to get stoned with 23 judges. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, Hashor yisakel, the ox is going to get stoned. V'gam ba'alav yumas, and the owner is also going to die. Now, the owner is not going to die, as we're going to see, right? Only the ox is going to get killed. But why does it say that? Kemisas habalim, kach misas ashor. Whatever would be the way the owner would be put to death, that is the method that the animal has to get the same trial, right? Only he doesn't get to testify, right? The animal gets the same trial, 23 judges. Amar le Abaye le Rava. Abaye says to Rava, Mimai dahai v'gam ba'alav yumas lekemisas ba'alim kach misas shor udasa. How do you know that the pasuk is supposed to be understood that way? That the way that you would kill the person, that's how you kill the animal. On to Tesvav Amid Beis. Eka likatalahu da'asa, ema likatalahu da'asa. Maybe it really literally means that you kill the owner, right? Why not? So the answer is im kain, if that's what it meant, lichtov v'gam ba'alav, velishtok. So therefore the pasuk should have, if the pasuk meant that, it would have said that the ox is stoned and also the owner, right? Wouldn't say, Kemisas, right? It wouldn't have, the pasuk wouldn't have been written, V'gam ba'alav yumas, right? The word yumas is extra. It's not necessary. Just say that you're going to stone the animal and the owner, period, right? So why does it have to say that? So the answer is, Ikas of Rachmana, Hachi, if the Torah had only written it that way, so then Hava Mina Beskila Saka Daitach Katal, Ihu Besayif. So maybe the way that you're reading the pasuk, the pasuk would have said, if the pasuk had only written that the animal gets stoned and also the owner, I might have presumed that means the animal gets stoned and the owner gets stoned. But really what should happen now that the pasuk says the animal gets stoned and the owner dies is that the owner should get a different death sentence. There's an order of severity of death sentences. Skila, stoning, is the highest and most severe of them. It's painful and difficult, so it's on the highest list.
and then lashes would be on the second to the
Lashes is not a death sentence, so that's not on their list. We've got streifa burning, right? Those are skila and streifa are the top two, and then we've got chenek, choking, and hereg of the and sword, right? We're going to discuss in the Gemara how those are actually done. So it's not just like you can take a sword and stab the guy, but we'll discuss how they're actually done. So the bottom two, the most lenient of the two, is either hereg or chenek. So therefore, when the Torah says that the owner is going to get a death sentence, maybe he gets a lesser death sentence. So the Gemara says, well, that doesn't make sense. Mamona beskila. So ihu besayef mamona beskila. What he's getting?
That's stoning.
So that means one second. How do I read this? Ikas of Rachmana Hachi Havamina Beskila. I would have thought he gets skila. Beskila Saka Daitach. So that wouldn't make sense. This is what that's what the Gemara is saying. It wouldn't make sense the way that I just said it. That the owner would get a death sentence of skila if his ox killed. Why? Because what is the punishment for a person who commits murder? If a human being commits murder, he gets the death sentence of hereg, regular with a sword. That's a lesser death sentence.
Hereg means decapitation, or
we're going to explain what exactly how they work. Yes, I don't want to get into exactly what the methods of them is. We're going to call it hereg, killing with a sword, right? Decapitation, if you will. Okay. So now, it wouldn't make sense. My ox killed somebody, I didn't, and now I'm getting a more severe death sentence than if I did it myself. That doesn't make sense. So, the Dilma, Haidekasav Rachmana, you must lakule ilave, la'afuki misayif, lechenek. So, okay, maybe what the Torah is telling us is that you're right, that you're going to get a death sentence, the person's going to get a death sentence, it's going to be even a more lenient death sentence. More lenient than sayif is going to be chenek, the choking death penalty, even lesser. And maybe that's what it means. The ox is going to get stoning. The owner, if he killed himself, would get hereg with a sword. And if the ox kills, the owner is going to only get chenek. Maybe that's what it means. So hani chalaman damar chenek chamor. So that's fine according to the opinion that says that chenek is the more severe el laman damar chenek kill mayek lememar. But if you're going to be of the opinion that holds that chenek is the most lenient, right? So what are you going to explain? How are you going to answer this question? That maybe the pasuk was saying, that the Basim sounds like a good answer to me. Hang on a second. Because of Rachmana, you must lakuli ilave lafuki misayef lechenek. Right. So maybe the pasuk's point is to tell me that you're lenient, and we're going to give you chenek instead of sayif. So that's fine according to the opinion that says that chenek is more severe. Right. So then. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Right, exactly. So this viewpoint in the pasuk that tells me that you can't interpret the pasuk that way. You can't say chenek is less, because according to the opinion it says chenek is more. So then there's only one way to interpret this pasuk now. If you killed, you get sayif, period. Therefore, if the pasuk is telling you that you're going to get a more lenient, there are no more lenient death sentences. Therefore, it must be financial, right? It must be that or to tell me that the ox gets the same death sentence trial that the human being gets. But if you're of the opinion otherwise, that chenek is the less severe, right? So then now you've got a very simple and alternate interpretation of the pasuk than the one we wanted, right? And you have the kasha is still here, right? Because the pasuk could be telling me you don't get sayif, you get chenek. That isn't telling me that what I wanted the pasuk to tell me, which is that the animal gets the same trial as the person.
The owner of the ox, you mean someone who has relations with the ox?
No, the owner of the ox.
So let's say somebody has an ox in the barn and Billy Joe has
yes.
And the owner could...
That's what the pasuk. That's what the pasuk says.
What happens in the barn after
his animal did the wrong thing, right? So therefore, the way that we're interpreting this is, right, we're saying, but that's what's bothering us. Why is it that he's going to get a more severe punishment if his animal does it than if he does it? That makes no sense.
Wait, I thought a sharmud would be on another person's land. Like if it happens on your land.
This is not a goring ox.
No, but if my animal, like if you're taking care of my animal and it kills you.
Yes.
Or somebody else.
There's no such thing. Muad, killing the ox does not matter, tam or muad. An
Okay.
animal kills a human being, gets killed immediately. It gets destroyed.
Right, but I'm also
As far as we're not even talking about financial liability, right? Financial liability is going to be a separate issue, right? This issue is going to, right now we're presuming there's no damage to the person who is on the receiving end
That's
of the
amazing
relationship.
that somebody would be for the tenuous of their animal responsible.
That's correct. And that's what's shocking to us. So therefore, the way that we want to interpret the pasuk is, it has nothing to do with the owner's culpability. He's not responsible. It's only telling us that the animal gets judged the way that his owner would get judged.
Losing the ox is a huge.
That's
penalty
enough of
in
it. That's a
itself.
huge penalty in itself. That's correct. So, okay. So, lo salka daitach. So you still can't interpret this pasuk in that alternate fashion by saying that the person is going to get this lower death sentence. He's going to get chenek instead. Dichsiv, because the pasuk says im kofer yushas alav, that if he's going to have a financial responsibility, if this person was actually getting a death sentence because his ox committed this crime, the pasuk says lo siklu kofer lenefesh. Sorry, so a person could this concept of person is not able to redeem himself from a death sentence. Generally speaking, if a person commits murder, you might think, oh, great, I'll just pay it off, right? I'll find his family, I'll give him, financial compensation, and I won't have to die. No, it doesn't work that way, the Torah says. If you commit murder, you get the death sentence, you can't pay your way out of it.
So in Canada, we can't do that. You're in Canada.
You can't do that in the United States, you can't do that in Canada. Well, there's no death sentence in Canada, is what you're saying. So now, if this animal is supposed to be, so then you might presume, right? Here we're saying in kosher yushasov, if the owner of the animal wants to give a payment instead of allowing his ox to die, so then potentially that might be acceptable. So the point is that since that's being considered, that would indicate that this is not an animal, that the owner is not dying. The owner is not the one dying, only the animal is, because we know that a person can never pay his way out of a death sentence. Only he potentially could redeem his animal. So therefore, lo siklu kofer lenefesh rotzeach, a person who murders can never pay his way out. Well, the Gemara says no. Adrabah, the reverse is actually true, because mishum hi gufa katal ihu lo tiski le b'mamona. That's the point of the pasuk, maybe. If he himself kills, you're right, he can't get his way out of it. He can't pay his way out. Ela b'katala, there's no way for him, he can't pay it. He has to get killed. Katal shoro, but maybe if his ox kills, then he's supposed to get a death sentence. But lifrok nafshe b'mamona, he could pay his way out of that death sentence because he didn't do anything. Maybe he can pay his way out of that. So therefore, there's still an alternate explanation of the pasuk that's still in play. Therefore, Ela Amar Chizkiah says instead, V'chein Tana de Chizkiah, some said it was also taught in the brises of the yeshiva of Chizkiah. Amar Kor, the pasuk says, Mos Yumas HaMakeh Rotzeach. The one who kills is supposed to die. Now, that has nothing to do with an ox. That's just telling us about murder. In the case of murder, somebody who murders gets the death penalty. Hu al ritzichas so atahorgo v'atahorgo al ritzichas shoro. The pasuk is telling us who gets the death sentence for murder. Only if he is the murderer. If his property is responsible for the murder, that is not a death sentence. Once we understand that, then we have to go back to the pasuk that relates to the animal, and we have to see that the pasuk says that the owner is going to get, like the ox is going to die like the owner dies, and we have to say we cannot interpret it the way that we've been trying to interpret it, that the owner is actually getting a death sentence, or he's getting chenek, or he's going to be able to pay his way out. None of those are valid explanations because we already know from the pasuk about murder that the person cannot get a death sentence.
There's a lot of things that bother me about the person being able to get a death sentence because of the animal. Because first of all, there's no chasra. There's no, right?
You'd have
no
to.
Adam. There's no bishoy.
We would have to assume that there had to be a case where all of that was possible. Maybe the owner was standing right there, and there were witnesses, and the witnesses, right? He's got, I don't know. He's selling his animal for this purpose, right? He's renting his animal out for services, and they'll witness, and he's complicit, and the people tell him you can't have your animal do that. You could have a case where there's warning and hasra and witnesses and the whole business. Nevertheless, he didn't commit the avera. He doesn't get killed. That's what the pasuk does. Even if you came up with such a case.
Because he didn't ask.
Okay? So now the question. Shur Sinai Bekama. There's another circumstance where an animal could get a death sentence. in the Torah. Historically, when the Torah was being given at Har Sinai, Hashem said all of the animals and all the people can't come onto Har Sinai. If some animal comes onto Har Sinai, it gets the death sentence. So if we were at Har Sinai, theoretically, and an animal wandered onto Har Sinai, and it needed to be killed, would you get 23 judges together?
No.
Why? Why not?
Because it was like a natural death.
You're saying it should die by itself.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Gemara seems to assume that it was the responsibility of the people to enforce the death sentence, right? But the question is, mi gamar shah mi doros o lo? This is sometimes a question that gets asked when you've got a historical event that took place, whether the laws of that one-time event follow the same laws of modern halacha, right? Maybe the laws of Mount Sinai were different than the laws that we have today. It's just a different case, different circumstance. So olo, or maybe it's not. So Tashma, the Tani Rami Bar Yecheskel says, Im behema im ish lo yechya. If an animal or a person would go on the mountain, it will not live. Ma ish bekaf gimel, and therefore we see, just like a human being had 23, af behema bekaf gimel, also an animal needed to be judged with 23. So there you go. Ha'ari, the next thing is ha'ari v'hazev, a lion and a wolf. So it says that they're supposed to get killed. So if they're going to get killed, they need 23 judges. And then the other opinion came along and said that, no, you better kill them. Whoever kills it first is good. That's a good thing. Kill those wild animals. They're dangerous. And then Rabbi Akiva came back and said, no, 23 judges. Now we're going to see what's going on with those answers. Reish Lakish explains, V'hu shemiso. This is only if the animal already killed somebody, right? If you've got a wild bear and the bear already killed somebody. Lohimiso, if this wild animal has not killed anybody yet, you cannot kill it. You cannot kill it. You need with the judges. So Alma kasavar yesh lehen tarbus v'yesh lehen balam. The answer is he thinks that these animals are trainable and they can have owners, right? You can have circus bears, circus lions, right? So they're trainable, and therefore you can't kill them just because they're there, right? You can't show up at the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus and shoot the lion, right? They say, oh, I saved everybody's life. It doesn't work that way. Rabbi Yochanan says, Afa pishlo hemisu, even if they didn't kill. You meet a lion, kill it, right? That's what he says. Alma kasavar elam tarbus ve'elam balam. He says, because they cannot really be trained and they have no owner, right? That's Canadian law, or a lot of laws, right? Somebody is raising a wild, dangerous animal in their house, and they say, it's my pet. There are certain animals you just can't raise as pets. They're dangerous.
The reason why they're calm because they're drugged or whatever it is.
Oh, that's possible, right? I don't know. But that's the machlokas. Tonight we learn a Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Call kodim lahorgan zacha." So Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah says, whoever kills the animal, that's great. So Bishlam, Rabbi Yochanan, I understand according to Rabbi Yochanan, my zacha. What does that mean that he was great? Because zacha leoran, it's a wild animal. It didn't belong to anybody. So what happens when you kill it? You get to keep the pelt, right? It's a wild animal. You got shot the lion, you get to keep it. Okay, so that's what he means. Ela the Reish Lakish lemay zacha, and that means even if my neighbor is raising it as a pet, he's got a pet lion, I come along, I shoot it, he has no right to be keeping that animal, therefore I get to keep the pelt.
Well, right? Why do you want to kill you for killing his pets?
He could be upset all he wants, but the halacha, Rabbi Eliezer says that you're doing the world a favor, hence you get to keep, you're the one who gets to keep the pelt.
The meat goes to him.
I would assume the person also, right? Then would assume the pelt is presumed to be the more valuable part. I don't know why exactly. I guess the pelt is more valuable, but the meat would go to the dogs or whatever it is. It's not kosher, right? So according to Reish Lakish, according to Reish Lakish, what does it mean he gets it? It's got an owner, right? So you just walked up and killed it. What do you mean? So kevan shemisu shavin hu rabbanon keman de gomar dinaihu, because this must have been an animal that was already killed somebody. And now there's a court case determined that this animal is already a killing animal. It's like the ox. It's an animal that's sentenced to death. Hence, what is the halacha of animal sentenced to death? The halacha of any animal that's sentenced to death is that there is no no part of the animal can be used. The animal has to be destroyed. So therefore, it is isuri hananinu. So therefore, if this lion got judged. Lion, was that one of the Ari was one of the lions, was one of so this lion got judged, it mauled, it killed somebody at the circus, and now the judges judge it and they shoot the lion. The animal is supposed to be destroyed. You're not supposed to keep the pelt. My zacha, so what does it mean that the guy is good? He's good that he saved people. The answer is zacha l'shemayim. The answer is that the heavens consider it a good thing, right? So you're not going to be able to get anything out of it, but you did a mitzvah. Tanya Kavasi Reish Lakish. We have a brisa that supports Reish Lakish. Echad shor shehemis vechad behema v'chaya shemi. So it doesn't matter whether you have an ox that gores and kills, or another domesticated animal, or a wild animal that kills. Bechaf Gimel, you need 23 judges to evaluate. Right? What are you evaluating? You're evaluating whether the animal killed before. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Eliezer says, "Shor shehemis be'esrim u'shlosha." An ox that kills needs 23 judges. Essentially, we're presuming the ox doesn't kill, and therefore it needs to be judged. You need to have a court case and determined. V'shar behema v'chaya shehemiso, but a moose maybe is a behema that could be dangerous, or another wild animal. Kol hakodim l'horgon zacha. Anybody who comes and kills it is zacha behen l'shemayim. So even though it's going to be considered to be dead, it's supposed to be killed, and that's the halacha, then you're going to get heavenly benefit. You're not allowed to keep the pelt. Rabbi Kiva says 23 judges. Well, that's the exact same thing that the first opinion said. So what's the difference between the two? Rabbi Kiva haina tanakama. He's saying the exact same thing. Eka beinahu nachash. The answer is Rabbi Akiva is going to add in. Is he leaving out the snake, or is he adding in the snake? He is. Tanakama din nachash kedin. Right, Rabbi Kiva is excluding the snake. He says the snake is excluded. The snake does not need 23 judges. The snake is the untrainable animal, and it's always dangerous. And so therefore you do not need, he says, you need 23 judges when you're talking about those animals. But these animals, not so. All right, it's a good place to stop.
Oh yeah, beautiful. So let me take a picture of this one.
I like
Yeah.